Have you ever had your heart broken? Well, actually, if you haven't had your heart broken, you are an absolute unicorn because I think we've all had some level of devastation when it comes to relationships that have ended or even relationships that never really got a fair chance to start properly. This week, I'm talking with Jen Klesman about all things breakups. We talk about why they hurt so fucking much and what we can do about it when we're in the depths. We talk about the devastation of relationships ending, healing from betrayal, whether or not closure is really a thing, and how to get support without burning out your friends. But first, let me tell you a bit about Jen. Jen Klesman is a therapist based in Chicago who specializes in relationships, dating, and breakups. She's also the author of a book called You Can't Stay There: Surviving a Breakup One Moment at a Time. This is the perfect episode for you if you have ever felt the crushing pain of heartbreak, or if you want to better support someone you love who is walking this path. Okay, here is my conversation with Jen. What makes a breakup so painful?
That's a huge question.
Just start it off light.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. What makes a breakup so painful? I think that it's really been dismissed how much of a massive loss it is to so many factors of our lives. It's a loss of your identity. It's like you went from being with a partner to now you're single. That means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. The loss of future. You're like, oh, well, some people who want, especially a family one day and get in marriage, like to have been with somebody and then suddenly it's just gone and you're back to square one. That's devastating, especially if you're older in your 30s or 40s and you want a family. There may have been potential betrayal, if there's infidelity. So then there's this loss of who you thought you were with the whole time. Yeah, it just completely disrupts a massive part of your life that was just a default person, the person you text whenever you have good news, the person that was just like always had somebody to do something on the weekend with. Like your default person is now gone. And that's a huge loss.
Yeah, I love that you pointed out how many different types of loss, even our phase of life that we're in, influences that. Because if we're in our 30s, if we have our lives already established, it's super disruptive to that. If we're towards middle or older ages, then what are we even supposed to do? Our whole lives have been that way. Or maybe even you're in your early 20s and this is the first time you realize that just because you love someone doesn't mean it's forever, right? But now that was the only person I've ever loved.
Or that person was there for these major life transitions from high school to college into adulthood, that they were always there and now they're not.
Yes.
But I definitely see breakups in later years, 30s, 40s, 50s, are so isolating as well because everybody else is married, has kids, whatever. It's a different stage of life. There's less single friends out there. It's very isolating and difficult. And so there's more grief there too, is that suddenly I'm not invited to the couple's game night anymore because I'm not in a couple.
Yeah, or maybe my partner's invited and I'm not. Who gets which friends and all of that. It's just such a mess on every level. So in your experience, I'm sure you've been talking to lots and lots of people as a therapist going through breakups. What do you think? Is there a certain time period that it's this grief? So I've seen memes where it says, twice the amount of time as you've been together is the amount of... And I'm like, well, great. I was with my ex for 6 years. So what the fuck does that mean for me?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I love that people have that quote. It's absolute crap. But I think people are looking for guidance on that because the number one thing you want to know as soon as the breakup begins is how long is this going to be excruciatingly painful? How long is this going to last? Because heartbreak is palpable. We feel it. It's absolutely devastating. And I wish there was a very clear-cut timeline. And sometimes when you get through the end of it, you can look back and depending on how long the relationship was, and everybody's just so individualized, it's really hard to say. It can take roughly 8 to 12 months or more to fully flush out a relationship that you were invested in, that this person was the plan, this person was it, you were ready to have a future with this person. And that doesn't mean you can't date and work on moving forward, and obviously longer and shortens for different people. But the biggest thing about the timeline is not to judge yourself because you're not doing anything wrong. Like, oh, it's been a year. Why am I still talking about my divorce, 8 years later? And healing looks different too throughout the stages of that.
Yeah. Sorry, folks.
So, yeah, that's like the
Sorry.
suckiest answer to be like, yeah, there is no timeline.
Yeah, and it's different for every person. And also, I mean, in my personal experience for each situation, I've been a serial monogamist basically my whole life, happily married now. Love you, honey. But also, there have been relationships that ended that were years and years long that took me a very long time to get over. And then also long term relationships that I didn't take a long time getting over. And then short relationships that took me so long. And it's just excruciating to be in this like mental torture of like, why did that take me X number of months or whatever? And this one, I can't stop years later thinking about it. So I love that you're saying, reminding ourselves to not bring judgment into it, to not feed judgment into it. Maybe we always have judgment, right? But to remember to have space for compassion.
Yeah. And not to think that, oh, I was only with them for less than a year. Why am I still stuck a year later? And I always like to use the analogy of like, if you drown in a bathtub or drown in the ocean, which is worse, you're also going through pain. There's still loss. Like you can't compare to other people. That's a big piece of it to keep in mind.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so before we continue on talking all things breakup, all things heartbreak and recovery and being ready for love again, do situationships count in this conversation? Do you have to have had serious commitment, a marriage license, or we are boyfriend and girlfriend or partner and partner or whatever? Like situationships are everywhere now. So are we also talking about this?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, because situationships are still relationships. They may be a lot more blurry, a lot more loose, and casual, but I still think that you are still connecting with another person. There's still a relationship happening, whether or not it is serious, casual, monogamous or not, or just friends with benefits. To lose that kind of connection that you're like, well, this person was still in some way, shape, or form stable in my life. And now that's gone. And also there's typically feelings get hurt when you're like, this person wants to date someone else when they wouldn't commit to me. They're committing to this person a week later. That happens a lot with situationships.
Ouch. Never heard
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. Can't relate.
Can't relate to that at all. And as different situations yield different recovery timelines, can you share about how trauma plays into this? Is it different for people who have had serious betrayal or maybe have difficult family situations? And how does trauma play into breakups?
It definitely does play in because when a breakup happens, it can reinforce a narrative that can be like, they always leave. I am unlovable. I'm too difficult because I'm too needy. I was always told this by my parents, by other people in the past. And now this breakup is reinforcing it. That happens a lot. It doesn't necessarily matter where the trauma came from. It can definitely be reinforced through a breakup.
And so does that mean that they always leave or I'm unlovable?
It doesn't. I think the problem is that people will carry those then into the next relationship. That's something I find very fascinating is basically what I would call kind of dating trauma. To carry that into your next relationship can be detrimental too, where it's like, well, they always leave me because the last two left when I cried too much or when I asked them for this and then they left. And so therefore, this person is going to leave me and you can project that onto another person. And we live by our narratives. If we believe this is going to happen, that they'll always leave, then we can sometimes create a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And subconsciously seek people out that are showing us that they will leave and then committing to them. And then,
yeah. And also, if you tell your partner that they're always going to leave, eventually that can wear down on people and be like, I don't know how else to prove to you that I won't. So it not only does it affect trauma that's already there, it can definitely create some trauma too.
Yeah. And I love that you're pointing out how we bring it into our next relationship. And something I've mentioned on the show before is I've seen so many people, essentially, it feels like they're waiting for their dating trauma to never have happened before they commit again. And I say this with so much compassion because, like you said, it is trauma, whether it's big T or little t, whatever, it's trauma in my body, right? And in my experience, I'm afraid and I don't feel safe or I don't feel lovable or whatever it is. But I've seen people say, well, my last person betrayed me, so how could I ever trust again? And to me, of course, I understand where that person is coming from. And I have experienced betrayal before too, and I know that hurt. And it's like saying McDonald's burned my fries and so I'll never go to Burger King. When we zoom out and look at it, it's not the same person. Then okay, don't date that person again, right? Maybe don't go back to her.
It's not rational, but it's emotional. Yes, the emotional, but Burger King has fries, therefore it could happen. Yeah.
Why are you helping people through breakups? Why have you written a book about breakups? How did you get to this point?
That's a great question. And whenever I kind of talk about it, it's something that just happened. I'm a therapist. I've been one for a number of years, 13 years. And I'm also a writer just by nature. Like that, I enjoy writing and as a hobby. I enjoy writing about mental health and also fiction. And I went through my own breakup in 2021. And ironically, my breakup didn't inspire the book. It was when I decided to cut off my ex and be like, I need 110% no contact anymore a few months after the breakup, because we all make that mistake. It was when just the timing was fascinating that I had like 3 friends come to me being, hey, like I heard you went through something. I actually just broke up with my partner a week ago. And I was texting out to friends and I was like basically writing the book as I was just like texting my friends, just like support and things I had learned. Cause like I definitely cope with like diving head on, being like, I want to understand the psychology of all this. So I kind of had done some of the research on my own, just naturally through my own grieving and healing process. And so I just was like, why don't I write the book I needed? There's things I need someone to tell me it's okay to want your ex back for quite some time. And that's fine. No matter how they hurt you, what they did, it's okay to want that. It's okay this is where the title of the book comes. You can't stay there is the name of the book. And it means basically that like grief is terrible. It's hard, but I understand like people don't want to always move on because that means leaving that ex and that relationship in the past. But you can't stay there. You can't stay in that grief. You're not living your life. You have to move on eventually. And it's the hardest like tipping point to go from I'm in this grief. I want to hold on tightly to this relationship, but it's over. I can't. And I have to think about myself finally. And I focus a lot on that like very sensitive time. And you get there naturally. There's a little bit of attention you have to put there. You have to want to get better. You have to want to move forward. But also part of it does happen a bit naturally. There was another book called How to Survive the Loss of a Love, which is like a lot more generalized grief. And it's a short book. It's very small and it's just snippets. And what I loved about that book was that it was short, because when you're going through it, and especially with grief of any sort, you can't absorb long, chunky chapters. And also, I didn't want a book that was like, get over it. Because what the hell does that even mean? Let go. Just let go. And so I've embraced the work a lot. It's also a topic, dating, relationships, breakups. It's a great topic. I love it.
It'll be around forever, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah. And I remember being in just the absolute depths with heartbreak. And it does feel like, how will I ever not feel this way? Especially for those of us that feel things so deeply, and everyone else is just going on with their lives. And even if you have friends checking in with you, it's like, well, I can't just be crying at my friend's house 8 hours a day. I need to like give them a break. I remember when I had my first really significant breakup, I was with my partner from 19 to 25. And I was like, I had never been an adult before without this person. There are a few phases of breakups that we're probably all familiar with. There's the initial crushing impact of the breakup. Then it starts to settle in, the dust settles. You realize, what the fuck am I supposed to do with my life? Will I ever love someone again? I don't want to ever love anyone else again. Whatever it is. And then there's the life post breakup. And then, of course, we become open again. We're open to love. And then we get happily ever after somewhere else. But let's talk about each phase. So immediately upon breakup, what are some things that we can keep in mind about that experience? What are things that are normal about that experience? And maybe everyone thinks like, is this even normal to think that? Or like you said, I want them back, even though I'm the one that just broke up with them. And one experience that I have had every single time and the relationship has ended is this like desire to reach out to that person and be like, guess what just happened to me? My boyfriend just broke up with me. Like when it's the person that you do everything with and process everything with, to not have that person there to walk you through your breakup is so fucking hard. And it's such a mind fuck because it doesn't really make any logical sense, but it makes heart sense.
Absolutely. Especially considering the more contact you have with that person, sometimes the absolutely more painful it is. So it ends up being the last person you should talk to, but it's the only person you want to talk to because they're the only one that can make this pain go away. And so what to first off normalize is that you will be obsessed. And obsessed is the correct word. It will be on your mind from the second you wake up until the moment you go to bed, if you can sleep. And you're not going to be able to sleep. Every scenario, everything you said, everything that, like, was it 3 months ago when they did that? Did that mean that they were thinking about ending things? All that stuff, you're going to be obsessed. That is totally normal. You're trying to sort out and make sense of something that's hurting you. We want answers. You're going to want to reach out to your ex. And a lot of times, and we'll talk a little bit more in this in a moment, but that's not the person you should be talking to. But the first things I generally advise people is to purge. If you're living together, to move out as soon as you can. That's usually when it gets messy, is when you're still living together. So you're still around that person. But as soon as you can to kind of get your own space, if you're not living together and you're able to get rid of, and I don't mean throw out, I mean put in a box the gifts, the pictures, anything around your place that reminds you, because it's going to be on your mind already, but you don't need to be having a good moment and then see some trinket from a vacation you guys took that now you're spiraling again. And that also goes for pictures on your phone. I don't tell people to delete anything, back them up on your computer, put them on the cloud, but you don't need to be scrolling for something and then see a picture from a great trip or a holiday.
Or have your phone put together a montage for you.
Oh yeah, those little oh, memories. I didn't want that memory. Thank you. I eventually I tell people to delete, the conversations, because otherwise you're going to go through those over and over again. Other things to purge and put away for a while is music that maybe you associate with that person. Finish TV shows if you're able to, because otherwise you're going to keep going back and watching that and thinking of the person you were watching it with, or stop watching it. Yeah, there's a lot of things that just kind of cleanse your space can help a lot. I definitely push people to not drink alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. You think it's going to make you feel better. It is not. If you're already grieving, it's just going to add fuel to the fire. And as far as weed too, anything that you're using maybe to numb or avoid, it's only going to postpone. You're going to wake up and you're going to be back to those feelings all over again. So I definitely advise to not use any substances, especially not to excess. And yeah, eat, sleep, and I say exercise, but generally move, create movement, get outside if you can, go see people, talk to people. But there's going to be a period in which you're going to wallow. That is totally normal. And you're not going to want to do anything, and give yourself that space.
And it won't last forever.
Absolutely not. It won't.
The intensity will not last forever.
No, it won't. I love journaling. That's my favorite way to process things. I always tell people, journal about it, get everything out, vent it out, carry a journal everywhere you go. Talk to people, connect with friends, family, whoever's safe.
Yeah, letting it out, whether that is writing. If you like writing, you've said you're a writer. For me, sometimes writing is too labor intensive, but even just speaking it out loud or doing a voice note, even just, this might sound weird, but recording a voice note of you expressing how you feel and then listening back to it can create this simultaneous validation of, what I'm saying is real and it makes sense and I can hear the emotion in my voice. And also I feel compassion for myself.
Absolutely. One thing, if anybody's listening is in therapy, you'll notice that sometimes we'll repeat back what you say so you can hear it. And sometimes hearing it in our own words, did I say that? Did I really mean it like that? Hearing it spoken back on a recording or for someone else can be really powerful in helping you accept or realize what you're actually feeling going through.
Yeah, in one of my most painful breakups, I remember I was okay, I need to feel my feelings. I was I so wanted to numb, but I knew that numbing myself out would just delay needing to feel through it. And my trauma response is hyperproductivity. Let's just fucking do it. Let's just get through
put your head
now,
down and get done.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I remember thinking okay, I'm going to do this. And I have this vivid memory of sitting, and I had a dog at the time, and I was sitting on the couch and I was just crying and I was just vocalizing out loud, I feel so sad. I feel so sad. And every time that emotion sort of changed, it was I feel scared. I feel devastated. I feel betrayed, and was just going through all of it. And my poor sweet little dog came up and put her head on my shoulder and just kept looking at me and then putting her head down. And eventually she got up and went into the corner and threw up. And I was like, oh my God, I have an empath, canine empath. But yeah, just letting myself acknowledge what I was feeling. Like, you might not even need to journal this whole long story of why you're hurting, but just to name the sensation and to name the emotion and to just notice the sensations in your body. It sounds oversimplified when it's like, feel your feelings, but really just letting your awareness highlight the sensations in your body is all that means. And just, it again won't stay that intense forever.
And I think it'd be a good time to also talk about why some people move on quickly and why some people don't. There's a lot of elements that come into play when people are like, well, why does so-and-so get everything so quickly? And I can assure you, men, women, people of every gender grieve and feel the pain the same. So why some people get over quickly or appear to get over quickly. And there are some people who have grieved the end of the relationship well in the relationship. They've already felt it. They've dealt with it before it ended. So the ending is a bit of a relief. It doesn't mean that they're not like, oh, I'm sad this person is no longer regularly in my life, but they just don't feel the devastation because they already went through that. Gender does hold a lot of weight here because men are not socialized to feel their feelings the way women are. They're socialized to just kind of go out to the bar and drink with their guys and maybe mention that this thing even happened. Women are stereotypically just told to cry it out and feel it. And it is true that, yeah, men push and avoid a lot more, even though they are still feeling it just as deeply, just as heavily. They're just not necessarily given the space to feel their feelings. And I think too, the idea that like feel your feelings and go through it and tolerate these feelings and grieve, that's still pretty new to our like culture and society. Like our parents weren't taught that. They didn't teach us. We're learning that now. I'd say it's becoming more normalized, but it's not something everybody wants to do. And understandably, if you're going through heartbreak, it feels terrible. You want to avoid this. And so a lot of people do jump into another relationship because they believe that the only way to get over someone is to be under someone, which is crap. That can usually like lead to a lot more pain.
Oh, yeah, I can attest to that.
Just for you, because you're just like, oh, this isn't my partner of 5 years. This is a stranger and their body is new and weird when they don't know me. But it's also, you can hurt the other person. This new person who has like, oh, you want to be in a relationship. This is exciting and great. And then finds out that you're not over your ex. But now why some people take a lot longer is just because a lot of this is like, how did you view the relationship? How did you view the breakup? Was it good or bad? For some people, like I said, it's devastating. Your life is reset and you didn't want that. Or there was betrayal and you're like, who was I dating? And everyone kind of just heals differently. Some people will take their times. Also, some people find it a lot harder to accept being single. Again, those are also sometimes people who will jump into another relationship very quickly. But I remember even once being on, it was just like a Facebook group about dating. And somebody made a comment that was like, nobody ever wants to be single. You just feel lonely and dead inside. And there were like 500 comments of people being like, no, what are you talking about? Dear God. But to recognize that some people do see being single as a terrible, awful thing, for what it says about them, for just obviously lots of people thrive in relationships, but just that will cause somebody to not want to be single and jump into like the next good or bad thing.
Let's talk about closure. As the dust starts to settle, as you start to accept, okay, we've broken up. Maybe you got back together again, then you broke up again. The first one didn't take, then you go back and then it's like, oh, wait, we broke up for a reason. Oh, yeah, break up again. But the piece around closure, and I say this with so much love and compassion because I also am the one that I'm like, no, I would be able to move on fully if I just understood blank. If I understood why he blanked, it's this compulsion to understand or to have some conversation with the person where they would be able to explain something that in our desperate minds thinks that it would explain it in a way that it wouldn't hurt that it's over.
Yeah, like, okay, now I know and I'm free of all these thoughts and feelings about the ending of the relationship. And I can let go. Well, first off, yeah, closure, you don't need it. You think you do, because a lot of times we just want to talk to our ex again, and to hash out what happened. And also get in those last words about like, well, by the way, just so you know that been going through this and it's horrible and you ruined my life. At the end of the day, when I look at closure, I'm kind of like, closure is from the facts that you already have, which is something happened. People are allowed to change their minds. Feelings change. Maybe this relationship just ended up not being for them. Maybe they fell out of love. Maybe they're going through something else entirely that they couldn't be with somebody else. Whatever it was, they chose not to be with you. And that's the fact that, like, you don't need more than that for closure. That this person chose to end the relationship, and obviously a lot of times people want to fight for it and do more and learn more and argue their point, but like if someone's kind of made a decision that this relationship is not for them, there's not much other closure you can get. I think people think that the answer is going to help them make them feel better, and a lot of times it doesn't, because it makes you feel worse and that person has made up their mind. And so yeah, I always say go back to the facts. That they wanted to end it, and that was their prerogative and they're right.
Yeah, and it sounds harsh, but no one needs a reason other than I don't want to be with you anymore. And it could be that if you want to know the reasons, it's because of your personality or what you did or what you didn't do or
Right.
whatever. But it literally could be the only reason is they don't want to. And that's good enough.
People's feelings change. People grow apart. And sometimes, to the worst part, when people they want closure, like you may have questions that your ex doesn't have the answers to. They just don't know. Like, why did you do this when this happened? They don't know. They just were in the moment. They were reacting emotionally or reacting to something else, and they don't know. So always be mindful of that when you're thinking, I want to contact them, I want to get closure. And also, they know they hurt you. Usually people want to have that conversation to really drive the stake and be like, you have really done this, this, and this to my life. You need to know how I'm suffering. Like they know. They know you're not okay. And if you're just seeking out to make them feel guilty and bad and worse, that's not closure.
Yeah. And if you hurt me and I want to have closure and I want you to acknowledge that you hurt me, when in some times the person that we are no longer with does not have the emotional maturity or capacity or resources to be able to do that, right? Maybe they don't know, but also if someone betrayed you, then to go to the person that hurt you and to ask them to make it okay, they're the person that was okay with hurting you.
Yeah.
Why would you expect that person to be the one to come and to be able to acknowledge and with compassion and validation see what you're going through?
Especially when it comes to something like infidelity. Like you're just asking for someone whose opinion of you value highly to nitpick and tell you why you weren't good enough. When typically, for the record, it is not, when it comes to infidelity, it rarely has anything to do with the other partner that didn't cheat. Is something going on? It's rarely about the relationship itself, because people like to think she wasn't having sex with him, therefore he went elsewhere for it. Or he was never emotionally available, so she went out and found it elsewhere. Like, it's usually not that black and white.
Yeah.
And if you're dealing with infidelity, I definitely recommend The State of Affairs by Esther Perel. It really drives home the fact that it's nothing like we think it is. And there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, if this person truly is willing to fix their ways and put in the work and try to regain your trust, because the relationship is really rarely the same after infidelity. It's very difficult to rebuild that kind of trust, but it can be done. But to say this person who may not be wanting to change and do the work, what does it say about me that I want to be with them still?
Yes. Why would you want to be with someone that doesn't want to be with you? And I know, of course, if you're still feeling love, it's hard to accept, but don't go after someone that doesn't like you.
They don't want a future romantically with you. You're really just kind of shooting yourself in the foot the more you're grasping for that attention and that affection for somebody who's just like, I can't explain to you, I just don't want this anymore, or I need time apart. And we can definitely go into with no contact. It's the first thing I always push toward people, because especially in the early stages of the breakup, you're going through so many emotions. You want that attention, you want that affection, you want anything back from that person. And that's not going to help you right now. You need that space to kind of basically calm down and not say something you're going to regret.
If you're just able to get through just one day at a time, because talking to them is only going to reopen things, it's only going to keep it fresh. It keeps you stuck, keeps you focused on something that's not helping you. So as the dust settles, maybe the intensity of your emotions are leveling out. And as we move into like from the surviving stage into like, okay, maybe I am okay again. Maybe this isn't the worst thing that ever happened to me, or maybe it is, but maybe I can see a future again. I can see dating again. So how do you recommend we go from surviving a breakup into like thriving in life again?
Ironically, I got this idea from a program that was like how to get your ex back. They preach this, but just like investing in yourself in like the areas of health, wealth, and relationships. Health, that can be physical health, mental health, exercising, and wealth can be, obviously getting your finances in order, or wealth of knowledge, nurturing yourself in areas like, oh, I've always wanted to try this hobby. I've always wanted to try this new thing or adventure this new place, wealth of experiences. And then also relationships, connecting with people again, finding new friends or connecting with old friends, reinforcing the relationships you already have or making new ones. So it's kind of like become the person you want to attract in the future. And even if you're not ready to date again, it's just becoming a person that you want to be. Nothing causes growth and like change like heartbreak. It's like one of the most powerful things to do that. And to find projects for yourself that can be of yourself. It could be creatively, it could be career driven, but find something to put your energy into and to enhance yourself.
Yeah, I love those ideas. Yeah, projects, putting a different part of yourself into something, like you're fully experiencing the grief, you're feeling the betrayal, you're feeling the sadness, and creating some opportunities, like some staged opportunities to feel something else. Even if it's like watching a funny movie, like just feeling what it feels like to laugh again. And you can go back to being sad after.
And you will. Your ex will pop into your mind plenty. The thoughts are not just gone, but they will lessen over time for sure.
Yeah. And so, how do we know when we're ready to date again?
When the idea seems interesting and fun. If it's not fun, don't do it. Dating should be fun. Meeting new people is exciting, like you never know who you're going to meet next and like when you can go on the first date of something that could change the rest of your life. It should be exciting. But if you're going and you're dreading it, if dating seems like a chore, if no one is even like, I'm speaking on the apps and so many people use them. If you're not seeing anybody on the apps, you're like, oh, I hope that person messages me. I hope we match. You're not maybe ready. If you're comparing everyone to your ex, you're not ready. Like if you're ready to be like, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm going to give it a shot. And it waxes and wanes. You're going to try it, be like, no, I don't think so. And then you're going to take a break again or do whatever you feel comfortable. But like the dating pool is more of like a river. It's always refreshing. There's always new people coming out of relationships, new people finally ready to date, people moving to your city or wherever. Like it's always refreshing. So don't get discouraged if like your first go, you're like, there's nobody, I don't like anybody here. There's always new people.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding us of that. And I remember after a breakup, someone saying to me, you're going to find someone that it all makes sense for, or some toxic positive bullshit or whatever. And I was like, I don't want to know anyone else. I don't want anyone else to know me that way. And if that's where you're at, you don't have to go on a date. Go when you do have the curiosity, when you do feel like, yeah, it seems fun. Maybe I do want to know someone else. Maybe I do want to share myself again with someone. And again, there is no completely healed, right? You don't have to wait until you can't remember that you had an ex. You can't remember what happened. Like that will never happen.
And dating will bring that up too. A lot of your thoughts of your ex are going to come up with dating. So yeah, expect that.
Yes. So let's talk about support, ways that we can support ourselves, ways that we can lean into our community without burning them out, ways that we can get maybe professional resources. Let's start with ourselves. What are some ways that we can support ourselves during all phases of a breakup?
I think the early phases, like we kind of talked about before, was the journaling. I personally will post on my Instagram journaling prompts because I think that can help. And the voice notes work all the same. Is that like ways to process through on your own? Because there's going to be a lot of times no one's up to text or talk to. So, and you're not going to be able to sleep. So like to be able to like process that on your own. And read books, resources, websites. Reddit is great for things like that. But like, yeah, finding the knowledge on your own.
Yes, I love that idea. And yeah, follow accounts that make you feel good. This is a great time to do a clean sweep of your Instagram, unfollow or block or mute or whatever people that it doesn't feel good to see their content right now. And it doesn't mean that you don't love your sister anymore because she's really happy posting pictures with her husband, right? It's just a social media feed. It doesn't mean anything about your life. You can unfollow people and follow them again later. It's okay to need to take some space from things that don't make you feel good. So unfollow things that make your heart sink and start following accounts that feel validating. Jen's account with journal prompts, or there's so many accounts that are just so validating for heartbreak. And we've said a couple of times before, try not to feed judgment of yourself and have patience for yourself. Try to have just ultimate spaciousness with letting yourself be in it, because it's impossible to be in the intensity forever.
And also, and remember too, that it's okay to have negative feelings about couples right now. When you're going through it, to be like, wow, good for you, you're engaged. I mean, obviously, don't say that to the person, but it's okay to have those feelings right now and be like, I wish I was happier for this person, but right now I'm really struggling to be. Like, that's okay.
Yeah, a part of us can be happy and a very large part of us can be devastated and disappointed and feel left out. Those two things can exist at the same time. I'm so glad that you said that. One other thing that really helps me is, as someone who is extremely emotionally sensitive and feels things really deeply, is I create what I call touchstones in my life. And I have one for heartbreak now, but a touchstone is in our lives looking at a situation where I felt something that I thought I would never get over, or the intensity would never wane. Maybe it's humiliation or feeling ashamed or feeling guilty or being heartbroken, and just noticing and like creating like a touchstone in my mind of when I didn't feel that way anymore. Right. And so I can look back on that first breakup where I was physically ill. I was so upset. And now I think of that person with love. Like, we had such a great time together, and he's so special to me and so special to my development as a person. And we're not in contact, but like, I feel nothing other than warmth for him, and just reminding myself of that. And so when I feel heartbroken again, and that helps me get through other breakups. I've been heartbroken again since then. And to remember, like, well, I can think of him and I feel okay. And I was, sobbing for weeks. So maybe it means that this time that will also happen.
Yeah. And I also tell people too, and I've read this numerous times, that's why the first one hurts the worst, because you don't have that reference point, to be like, I will get through this. And you will. But like in the moment, you're not, especially early on, you're not going to believe that at all.
Right. Yeah. And that's why maybe it's not a touchstone of heartbreak. If you want to play with this idea, is a touchstone of just sadness, or a touchstone of, like you said, just a really difficult conversation that you just couldn't let go of in the past. And now you don't even think about it. Right. And so the intensity will be different if you're thinking of a hard conversation or a conflict you had with someone, and now you don't feel like the heart-pangy stuff anymore. And so maybe like escalated up a couple notches when you're thinking of it in terms of your heartbreak. But yeah, that can be a helpful thing to do.
I think that there's this big hyper focus on the idea of let go, letting go. And I even remember when I was going through my own breakup, being like, well, how the hell do I do that? Someone tell me how to fucking let go. I was Googling it, how to let go. I'm ready. I don't know how. And I've personally found and professionally found that it's better to focus on how you're holding on. The opposite. What are you doing? Are you still cyber stalking them? Are you still fantasizing about them coming back? Like, what are you doing to hold on? And try to be mindful of those actions, because letting go will happen on its own. That's a very natural thing. We can't make it happen, but it will happen naturally.
Yeah, I love that idea. How are we holding on? And because like you said, we're going to have those thoughts anyway, but are we feeding it? Are we feeding that energy? Are we choosing to go look at their new girlfriend on their Instagram, right? I know it will feel good. I'll look at who they're dating and how different they are from me, or how they're similar, whatever, right? But it's, like, are we feeding it?
Yeah. I also wanted to talk about, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, but just definitely the no contact piece. I think that is huge at any point during a breakup. It's the last thing you want to do, because like I said, that this person will make it all better, but the longer you're in contact, the more you're picking at that wound. And I elaborate about it in my book a lot because it's such a strong pillar of healing. I see it as 3 branches of no contact with them, in the traditional sense of no texting, no calling, no running to them accidentally at 4 p.m. when they always work out at the gym. That's, the basics of it, just no contact with them. And you don't have to block, but you can unfollow or mute them on social media. But then the second pillar is like no contact with what's going on with them, which again is getting back to muting or just not checking their Instagram story or their Snapchat. Also not looking at what their friends are doing or talking to their friends or family, cutting off contact there, because also not looking at those people's social media to know what's going on with your ex. Basically, no cyber stalking. But the last pillar I think of is a bit more unique, but I think it's just as valuable. No contact with the idea of them. And that's a bit more complicated because obviously you're going to be thinking about them all the time. So this is a lot more focused on intention and how you're engaging with the memories, because it's okay to have memories and think about that vacation and think about the conversation you guys had. But it's like, how do you view your ex now? Because you can go through those pictures and see them and be like, oh, that's really sad, that was from the past. But like, this person is no longer in your life. And this is the kind of the harder stuff to hear. But to not see them as someone who is still a part of your life now, because those pictures are somebody who is from the past and that's not who they are anymore to you. And there can be some comfort from that, but it's also comfort from somebody who no longer exists, to see the picture of you guys together. And this also kind of involves not rehearsing the speech you're going to give when they finally come back and you're going to tell them what they did and what they have to do to get you back. That's giving you this idea that they're going to be in your future. And so not engaging as much with those thoughts, and also it's about intention. Like, are you preparing for them to return and to re-engage with this relationship? Or are you just you can't always help it because the thoughts are going to be intrusive, but are you intentionally reliving this memory because you're like, this will somehow play in our future? So yeah, that's the hardest one. And you're not going to get it right out the gate. Like, people slip up with no contact all the time. But yeah, 30 days is usually a measurable endpoint to be like, you can make it 30 days. And then from there, decide if you really do need contact with your ex or not.
Thank you for outlining that. I love the way you broke it down. It's brutal. It's brutal, but it's true.
And it's so important because you're going through withdrawal. So it's going to be hard.
Yeah, literally. So how can we lean into the people that we have in our lives, and also maybe how to cultivate that if you are coming out of a relationship that was your only person that you shared vulnerably with? We've talked about people socialize as men, especially. Oftentimes their partner is the only person they talk to about their feelings. So how can we lean into community or even build community when we need support?
Finding the right support is very important, because sometimes, I'm not saying people in relationships and who are married can't be there and empathize and support, but sometimes you may get a variety of reactions or responses because those people can sometimes be biased or be fearful of what you're going through. It can be triggering to be like, wow, well, what did you do that made this breakup happen? Because I don't want to do that. And again, they can be perfectly great for support, but being mindful of somebody who their last breakup was 10 years ago, or their last breakup was in high school. Like, they don't really understand what you're going through the same way, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, going through a breakup now. And so be mindful that they're great as friends to be there and give you the space, but be mindful of that their relatability. And I say that because somebody else who's going through something a lot more recent or currently can sometimes be a better support system when you need it consistently. And again, for people who not everybody has that those friends in person or even just online. I love Reddit personally. I found Reddit is a 24/7 support group. And you don't even have to you don't have to comment or ever post, but when it comes to just seeing that people are going through and feeling the exact same thing you are, it can really, really be validating. And I'm a strong believer in finding a breakup buddy, basically. That's kind of what I've at least coined it, is that you can post there or on Facebook groups that hey, I went through a breakup 4 weeks ago. It was this long, blah, blah, looking for support, and finding someone to individually talk to and to mutually support, because they're the ones who are going to know that by month 3 or 4, 5 or 6, you're still in it. You're still feeling, they're going to get it when your other friends are like, really? Oh, you're still thinking about them? What? This person's like, yeah, you are. Of course you are. I find the kind of a breakup buddy that is invaluable, to have someone going through it with you at the same time.
Yeah, I love that idea. I could have used that. My friends, I'm sure if you're listening, were like, Hannah could have used that, because we sure did hear a lot.
Yep. Friends can definitely burn out. So be mindful of that.
Yeah, and letting your friends know how you want them to talk about your ex could be really helpful too. Because I've been in situations where I mention them and they're like, that's that jerk, he's such a fuck, whatever. And villainizing them if they did something like overtly terrible to you. But like our friends will do that if we're literally just like different people, like the kindest person I've ever met in my life. And they're like, oh, he's such an asshole. Like villainizing them isn't necessarily going to do anything for you in the long term. And
especially if they come back.
Especially if they come back. And we've all been there talking like, oh, I hated her anyway. And then guess who I got back together with? We're like, great. I'm so happy for you. Right. But villainizing them is a thing that makes sense from a heart perspective, but it isn't necessarily who you are, or there doesn't need to be a bad guy. There doesn't need to have been a bad guy in the situation. And again, it's just coming back to how hard it is to accept. Just accepting that it's over, and it can be over without either of you being the devil.
And also recognizing too, some empathy on the other side of things is that how would it feel to be like, I can't be with this person for whatever reasons, like my feelings just aren't there. And now you're the bad guy, to be villainized yourself because you're like, I had to do this for me. So it's important to remember that, yeah, when we try to villainize them, that like we're taking out that empathy for the fact that like this wasn't easy. I don't know anybody who's ever easily been like, I'm just going to break up with them. It's fine. I've never met someone who didn't struggle with the fact that like, oh crap, I have to end this.
Yeah, it's really hard in different ways. It hurts to have it ended with you. It hurts to end it with someone that you care about. It just fucking sucks no matter what.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. And when we're talking with our friends, this is something I've said in episodes now, probably multiple times, but just letting yourself ask for the type of support that you want. And maybe even that's a new pattern in your relationships. So if in your friend group, all you do is bash the ex and you're like, well, I couldn't just be like, hey, would you please just listen to me and just support me? That would sound so weird. My friends would be like, what's wrong with you? Like we can even say it, like bring some lightness into it of, you know what? I want to try something totally new. Can we try something totally new? And I'm just going to talk about it. And he's not a bad guy. And we can just be like, it sucks. That's it, right? It just sucks. When in doubt, if you're listening to a friend talk about their breakup, you don't have to fix it. Just saying, I'm so sorry that's happening to you. That fucking sucks.
And just being available.
Yeah.
Be available. Yeah. And be available to hear it over and over and over and over again, because that's just how it goes.
That's how it is.
That's how it is.
And what about professional support? What sort of things can people do if they feel like a breakup buddy isn't enough and they're still moving through it?
I always tell people when it comes to finding professional support, I don't look at it as there's anything wrong with you. And there's never a timeline for like, well, it's been a year and I'm not over it. I should talk to a therapist. But I think a therapist can help bring in a different perspective, and also kind of help you examine what are you doing, what aren't you doing to help move that process forward, or where you may be stuck, or what has left a lasting mark on you as a result of the breakup or this relationship ending.
Yeah, and that's such a good point. And I know therapy is not accessible to everyone, but if it is something you're able to do, then that person also is literally only there to listen and to support you.
And also it's about the bias. I always tell people too, is that, I'm on the outside looking in, I'm kind of like watching the movie and able to say, well, wait, you forgot this part, but also like your friends are invested. I have a close friend that was very devastated by my breakup because she has kids and she wants me to have kids soon so she can be an aunt. And I'm like, wow, okay, thanks for the support.
I'll write that down. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
My bad. So to kind of like the bias you sometimes our friends will have, better or worse, intentionally or not, it's there. But therapist is the goal is to be someone, again, on the outside who doesn't have any horse in this race other than to help you get through this.
So to someone who is listening to this episode, Jen, and they are in it, they're so in it right now, what's a message that you have for that person?
My favorite quote when it comes to breakups is that it will hurt and 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 hurt, and then one day it won't. That it does end. And it's okay, whatever you're feeling, no matter what happened, to still want them back, to still want that connection. And it's okay to take your time to get there. There's no timeline. There's absolutely no timeline. And so the biggest judgment comes from ourselves, of course, to be just like, well, what's wrong with me that I'm not over it? And that's sometimes some of the more toxic things that can feed into all this. Is so just to be kind and just be like, this hurts. This is loss. This is real. This is valid, no matter what the situation was. Don't be hard on yourself for things you didn't know at the time. And also that, this will end. And nothing creates growth the way breakup and heartbreak does. It can really transform you into something amazing. You never know who's just around the corner either.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Okay. So where can we find your book? Where are you on Instagram? How can we follow along with you?
My book's on Amazon, so it's available in paperback and Kindle. It's called You Can't Stay There, Surviving a Breakup One Moment at a Time. I'm also on Instagram. My tag is Jen on Paper. And also my website is jenonpaper.com. But I do post daily about breakup content, breakup journaling prompts, quotes, because quotes are so powerful. Yeah, on Instagram daily. And Facebook too as well. Jen on Paper on Facebook.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Of course.
This has been such a good conversation. It's been so validating, going down memory lane with all of my heartbreaks.
I bet. It sounds like a lot came up. You're like, oh yeah, that time I went through this.
Oh yeah, and that guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and that guy.
Oh, yeah.
No, but yeah, thank you for talking about all of this and for being such a validating space for all of us, because whether we're in it now or have been in it, so many of us have been in that space of the hurt and the hurt and the hurt. So thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for having me to spread this, because that's really the goal at the end. It's just, I even joke about my Instagram being like, this is not an account you're going to follow forever. And that's fine. If I lose followers, cool. That's good.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah. Thank you.